Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Cock and Bull Show. My name is Neil White, and this is my colleague, Josh Kendall. And we're here to talk about South Carolina football this weekend. The Gamecocks are playing the Gators.
Right.
But it's not the Gators that our fathers were used to seeing. Your father, maybe, not my father.
Or even us 12 months ago.
That's right.
I mean, this is a Florida team that when it came in to play South Carolina last year, undefeated, ranked 3 in the country, 2 in the BCS, carried that really until the end of the year. One Notre Dame loss at the end of the season away from playing for the national title,
right.
And now they are a train wreck. The Gators are absolutely miserable on offense. They've lost 10 starters to season-ending injuries on offense and defense, but it's the offense that's just been terrible. They average 4.8 yards a play. Everybody else in the SEC averages at least 5.3 yards per play. They're still somehow number 1 in the SEC in defense. That defense, despite losing a guy like Dominic Easley, they've just now lost another linebacker, still playing well. Despite that, 4 straight losses, including a game against Vanderbilt at home last week in which they weren't even competitive. So suddenly we're in a very unfamiliar situation of A, South Carolina being a double-digit favorite against Florida, and B, the Gamecocks having to answer a lot of questions this week about, are you going to overlook the Gators? I'm not sure. I know I've never heard that question. I don't think I've ever imagined that question even being asked.
No, you definitely wouldn't have thought that. Sorry, even a month ago, they're 4-1 and in the top 25, and now 4 straight losses have pretty much blown a hole in their season. Will Muschamp maybe scrambling for his job by the time this is over. So they're really in must-win territory in a lot of ways, just to have a winning record of, forget maybe even going to a bowl game. But South Carolina, Florida State left in addition to Georgia Southern. This truly is must-win territory for Florida.
They've got to beat the Gamecocks or the Seminoles at least, and beat Georgia Southern, which is the way they've played is not a given necessarily, to get to a bowl game. 22 straight bowl games. That streak is in big jeopardy. They come into Williams-Brice. The way FSU is playing, you don't know that anybody in the country is safe. Maybe Alabama's going to beat them. So if you're the Gators, you cannot bank on winning that game. You're right. All of your marbles are on Saturday night in Williams-Brice Stadium. And not only have you lost 10 starters to season-ending injuries, you may be on your 3rd-string quarterback by that time. Tyler Murphy, who's backing up Jeff Driscoll, who broke his starting quarterback, broke his leg against Tennessee, has been out for the year, has a shoulder sprain. Not practicing much this week. Even if he does play, he's a young kid who, Connor Shaw can miss a week or 2 of practice, pick up pretty much where he left off. A kid like Tyler Murphy is young. Cannot do that. So they're either going to have a backup quarterback with not many practice reps under his belt, or they're going to have a 3rd-string guy who has not taken a collegiate snap. And
on the flip side of that, the Gamecocks come in rested, pretty healthy, had the off week, batteries recharged.
Right.
What do they have to do well to just keep doing what they've been doing?
Well, they've got to be true to their word that they're not going to overlook the Gators, that they're going to take this team seriously. This is a team that in Florida, if they get an early break, maybe they play well, maybe they can beat you. They do have a decent defense, like we mentioned. So they have got to just do their thing. Connor Shaw, if he's healthier than he was against Mississippi State and can run for some more first downs, the offense should look better than it did against the Bulldogs. That'll be a key. But overall, and Steve Spurrier has been very, willing to acknowledge this, South Carolina is as healthy as anybody in the country. Mike Davis, Jadeveon Clowney, Victor Hampton, rested some from practices last week, all expected to be back. Cody Waldrop, the center, might be back. We don't know if he's going to start in place of Clayton Static. It doesn't sound like it at the moment, but we don't know. But he's really the only guy that is questionable at this point. Brandon Wilds will be back. So absolutely, South Carolina is, for a final 3-game stretch where they still have the SEC East in their sight, very healthy.
Right, and the Gamecocks can get to the clubhouse. This is their final SEC game. If they can win, they're 6-2 and in a position to have a shot at the title. And so you've played out how that could all fall depending on what Missouri does. Missouri's off this week. Depending on what Georgia got a huge game against Auburn this week. This week is going to be huge in determining where the Gamecocks go from here.
South Carolina's players and coaches probably will leave their hotel. Game starts at 7, around 4 o'clock. I'm sure they'll spend the 3:30 to 4 o'clock hour watching that Georgia-Auburn game and rooting hard for the Tigers. By the time their game kicks off, somebody on that sideline will probably know how things have gone in Auburn and whether or not Georgia has lost that game, which opens things wide open for the Gamecocks. If Georgia loses to Auburn, All South Carolina needs at that point is a Missouri loss at Ole Miss or against Texas A&M. Both things very easily could happen. If Georgia beats Auburn, the prospects get a lot dimmer. Although Kentucky still has a shot to beat Georgia,
right.
And Kentucky a couple of years ago came within a hair of doing that in a game that would have sent South Carolina to the SEC's title. So all hope is not lost if Georgia beats Auburn, but the Gamecocks really need a Tiger win before they kick off against Florida. And like you say,
right.
None of it matters if they don't take care of their business.
Right. They have to win out, and that's the big thing at this point. If they can get to 6-2, if Missouri falls back, got a shot to go to the SEC championship.
Right.
Missouri wins out and goes to the championship game and loses that championship. The Gamecocks may have a chance to go to a better bowl than they've been to the past 2 seasons.
Right.
How does the bowl scenario shake out?
I am not a believer in the let's avoid Atlanta and protect our record and protect our image and maybe get to a better bowl than going to Atlanta and getting whipped potentially by an Alabama team. I'm saying, Georgia, you'll hear Georgia people make that argument, Missouri people make that argument as well as South Carolina people. But you can certainly make that argument. If South Carolina finishes 10-2, does not play in the title game, they'll be very attractive in a bowl game. But there are a lot of very attractive SEC teams. When you're talking about that second spot, that second BCS spot, assuming as we all are that Alabama goes to the title game, Auburn right now, particularly if they do South Carolina a favor this weekend and beat Georgia, is going to be looking awful good for the BCS. Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel and what will almost certainly be his last collegiate football game. Very attractive for a BCS bowl.
Right.
So I'm not sure that is realistic, although we're 3-4 weeks out, so I don't think we know for sure anything. But absolutely, if you want to get to an Orlando, rather than putting yourself in the mix for what might be a kind of a scrum for Tampa, Jacksonville, etc., you want to win these games.
Right. And if they're going to win,
Mike Davis is going to need to, control the ball.
Right.
They're going to need to not turn the ball over. Last year, they handed Florida the game in the first half. They got behind the 8 ball.
21 quick points, and it was basically over.
And you would think that as humiliated as they were by that loss, that would erase any chance they have of overlooking the Gators at this point. I'm sure they'll see that film a lot. As long as South Carolina holds on to the football, can put a few drives together against that Florida defense, they should be fine. South Carolina's defense is getting well. They're getting healthy. They're playing better. Florida's offense, provides a great opportunity to feel good about yourself. I don't think the Gators are going to turn things around offensively, and so I don't think they can beat South Carolina. South Carolina, if Connor Shaw is healthy and moving like the old Connor Shaw, I think can score 30-some-odd points. If they can't,
even on that defense.
Even on that defense, because that defense is down another middle linebacker, Antonio Morrison. I don't know how much more gas they've got in the tank. If South Carolina doesn't have a healthy Connor Shaw, I still think they score 20. And 20 is plenty to beat the Gators. I'm going to take South Carolina something to the tune of 21-14.
There you go. Take that to Vegas. Put a little money down. Josh Kendall, are you ever wrong?
No, never have been.
Never wrong.
4 straight years, undefeated.
Well, I may have to go back and look at some of the tape. That wraps up this week's Cock and Bull Show. We'll see you next week.